Hey guys, welcome to the first video of 2018 in the gold recovery series, and very happy to say that we are starting with a mailbag video for the first one this year. It was sent in from a subscriber called David Bryan, which is from KS in the USA. I assume that's Kansas. Hope I've got that right. And he had contacted me a while ago and said he had a bit of this stuff and would I care to have a look. And it's yeah, let's get straight into it. So I've cut it open, and what he's actually sent here, so we've got a little cover here which he wasn't sure whether it was gold plated or not, so we might have a look at that. But the main interesting thing that he sent through is a bag of this kind of gold colored stuff. And what this is RJ45 network connectors like these that he comes across in reasonably large volumes. And as far as I know, what he does is he feeds them through a industrial paper shredder type machine and then just uses water to float off the plastic and reclaim the what we assume to be gold plated contacts. So yeah, I've been asked about this a few times in the past. I've never really had enough to do a video of my own to see whether these things are actually worth recovering. So yeah, very exciting. So I think what I've done here, maybe the first step is to look at how we're going to approach these contacts. And so what I've actually done is, so we know each one of these cables has 8 of these little gold plated contacts on the end, and I figured we want to know at the end of the day what the value for each one of these connectors are. And so what I've actually done is I've taken, so I have a few of my own new unused ones that I've kind of harvested, and I've taken 10 of them, looks like this, and I have pulled out the little gold plated contacts. So it doesn't look like very many, but we assume that there's going to be 80 of these little contacts there. So let's start off by weighing the 80 contacts and seeing how much 80 of them weigh, so we'll know how much material there is in 10 of those connectors. Just going to zero that off. I think you guys should be able to see that. So if we pour those 80 contacts out, I've lost one, put them on there. So we have about 2.38 grams from 80 of those contacts. So let's just note that down before we go too much further. So 2.38 grams from 80 of those, and if we're going to work out how much material there is in each one of those contacts, then I think we can round that to roughly well, let's not round it, let's do the best we can, so 0.238 grams. Okay, and then the next thing we want to do is we want to see how much I've got to work with. So we won't actually be processing all of this, because I see there are some larger chunks in there. So what I'll do is I'll actually filter this stuff so we get mainly the smaller chunks. I guess there's some intermediate size material in here as well, which must come from the same connector somewhere. Maybe they've got like a little bit of a gold shield in them or something like that. But let's just see what we've got there. So he sent about 170 grams of material. So I think what I might do is I might work with about 50 grams or so. So I'll filter it out so we get the smallest material, and then we'll work with about 50 grams. So let's put that into here, 50 grams, and if we go 50 grams divided by 0.238, divided by 0.238, that's going to give us pretty close to 210 of those connectors. So that actually works out pretty nicely. So we're going to process the material from about 210 connectors and see how they yield out. So pretty straightforward process with these. I'm going to cover them in concentrated hydrochloric acid in the fume hood on the heating element. I will be heating it all to about 70 degrees Celsius, and then I'm just going to add nitric acid, concentrated nitric acid in small increments, slowly over time until all of the metals are dissolved. I usually go over just a little bit. It's quite hard to get it perfect, so Any slight excess of nitric acid will be neutralized with sulfamic acid, and then we're going to precipitate the gold with sodium metabisulfite and wash the powder. Obviously in this in between here, if the solution is not nice and clear and clean, as I suspect it might not be, I'll probably also just vacuum filter it to make sure it's all nice and clear. So see you guys a bit later. If there's anything worth seeing along the way, I will certainly show you. Hey guys, so here we have a sample of these network connector contacts that we're processing. So this is, I've actually opted to go for 80 grams instead of 50 grams like I had in the first part of the video, mainly because I found I had I had enough to do more, and I figured dissolving a bit more won't be too big a hassle, but it might improve our yields, or might improve our calculations a little bit, working with a fraction more gold. So and see, it's not super clean. There's a few pins in there, there's some plastic bits, there's definitely some stuff in there that's not gold plated, but I think overall this is the kind of material that's going to fall out of Brian's machine, so sorry, David Brian's machine. So we'll just process it as is, like just basically saying if he doesn't bother to do much more than this, what's he going to get in terms of yield. But the real reason I've got the microscope out is I want to have a look at these things and just try and guesstimate first whether I think they're going to be hard gold plated. So to do that, we're just going to do the standard old test where I've got all the various bits there, and they are going to get a drop each of 35% nitric acid. So this is a known ENIC sample here that I'm dropping it onto now, so I'm expecting after a minute or two a fairly vigorous reaction happening there. Those things, we'll just give them kind of coat them quite well in that. And then this is the little notebook cover that he sent, which he thought might be gold plated. I don't think it is. I think it's probably going to be some kind of copper alloy. We'll see what the nitric acid does, but yeah, let's leave this here for a few minutes and I'll start the stopwatch, and I'll get back to you guys and we'll have a look at what happens. I think you might already be able to see on the very thinly plated ENIC sample there, if I can get the focus right, we've already got a bit of a reaction happening. Nothing particularly happening with that, but you will notice also a reasonable reaction happening with those network connectors, and that is a fairly bad sign. Usually if I get to this point and I see that much of a reaction, I would be inclined to stop. You see, we're basically working with what seems to be about ENIC plating thickness there, so normally not worth the time to process. But being that this is a yield video, we are going to do it anyway and just see what we get. So I'm just going to leave those for a couple of minutes and then we'll come back and have a look at them again. Okay, so here we have about 4 minutes later, and as you can see, one of the little contacts has started basically losing its gold plating, and the downside to that, or one of the observations here, is that it's essentially coming off as lots of little fragments rather than a foil or a sheet. So that is a very, very thin gold plating on these kind of things. The ENIC sample has reacted pretty much as we expected, nothing special there. I'd say the ENIC has probably reacted slower than the contacts, which is never a good sign. The little plated notebook cover hasn't done much, so I'm not sure. It doesn't really tell us whether it's gold or not. It just tells us that it's not reacting to the nitric acid, so I might have to dissolve a small piece of it in aqua regia and then do a stannous chloride test to see whether we're actually dealing with gold there. But yeah, the main objective of this video obviously is these connectors, and at this point I'm going to say that if I can get some visible gold out of 80 grams of those contacts, we're going to be doing quite well. So yeah, let me get on with the main batch and I'll be back with you guys a little bit later. Hey guys, so for the first time ever I got a pretty amazing result from those RJ45 network connectors. It's the the first time ever that I'm showing you guys a beaker that really doesn't actually have any gold in it. Yeah, that's basically went through the process of dissolving the 80 grams of those little inserts from the RJ45 connector, and the dissolution of it was actually relatively painful because they are phosphor bronze contacts, which means they have a lot of tin in them. And what actually happens is with the nitric acid, the tin forms a metastannic acid sludge, which then made filtering very difficult. I was optimistic that there would be some kind of fine brown powder in the bottom of the beaker, but the reality is that I think with only 80 grams of material, the gold density was just so low that even precipitating it meant that the molecules wouldn't really coalesce and kind of fall to the bottom. So yeah, very interesting result there. Unfortunately not the result I think that David was hoping for, or any of the rest of us for that matter. But it is what it is. So yeah, I really should have followed my own advice based on my little nitric acid test to start off with. We know that there is some gold because when I did that test you could see the little flakes coming off and actually floating in the acid, but the fact that they came off so quickly and they came off as little tiny flakes rather than as foils was a really good suggestion that it was a very, very thin gold coating. And then if you assume, and correctly so, that it is not pure gold, then it means that that very thin coating is even less gold than you think. So yeah, recommendation at this point is don't bother at all with RJ45 network connectors. There would definitely be more value in the copper than there would be in refining them for gold. So that at New Zealand dollar prices, that 80 grams of, let me just grab the calculator here, of copper is probably going, I think it's about, let's say $5 a kilo. That's about 40 cents worth of copper, and there's definitely not 40 cents worth of recoverable gold there. So I do still have a few of the bigger bits that came from David's stuff, which I might have a look at a bit later. But yeah, sorry to end on such a bummer, guys. Hope you guys have a good week, and I'll see you next time.